The yellowed photograph slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor, where a small pool of spilled coffee glistened beneath it. I didn't have to pick it up to remember how it felt. The smooth, slightly curled edges against my palm, the faces blurring together, smiling, laughing, but now it seemed tainted, marred by an understanding I hadn't sought. My chest tightened, and I glanced at the clock on the wall, its ticking, steady cadence only amplifying the chaos in my thoughts. It had been a few weeks since I had driven back to our old town, where the echoes of childhood lay nestled in the Louisiana bayou. The air had a weight to it, a tangle of humidity that tangled my hair and wrapped around my lungs. Every familiar structure, crumbling houses and rusted fences, boasted stories I thought I'd bandaged properly, but the truth had a way of chipping those stitches, leaving a mess that demanded to be cleaned up. I hurled myself into the afternoon, navigating the streets with a deliberate pace. I needed to find Sam, needed to know if he could help me piece this together. Sam, my brother, or that is what I had always believed. Until the other night, when our mom, somehow lost between another episode of wine-induced honesty and the lies she spun like thread, let slip that our family was a web of complexities I had never envisioned. "Have you talked to him lately?" she had asked, tilting her nose downward, as if the question was far too pedestrian for a woman of her supposed intellect. "You know, he's your brother, but it's complicated." That's when the weight sank in deeper, cracking open the surface of my memory like glass. Complicated? I didn't even know how to categorize what had just unfolded. Before the coffee table had threatened to shatter under the weight of her hidden truths, Sam's face had flickered through my mind, a gust of gentle reassurance, an anchor on stormy waters. He was the one who lifted me out of despair in high school when jagged edges of bullying had bled me dry. He was the one who provided a glimmer of laughter, a reminder that there was joy even crammed inside crumpled family agendas. As I parked in front of his rundown apartment complex, a twinge of unease twisted my gut. How do you approach a conversation that could rewrite your entire existence? What if I unraveled a thread that led to something dark and unforgivable, or worse, a silence so deafening it would never again be drowned out by shared jokes or playful banter? I pulled up my phone, swirling through the various texts we'd exchanged over the years. Unremarkable things, a joke here or there about our father's terrible lawn. A photo would slip through, sometimes with us mugging for the camera, often in front of my old pickup truck, or surrounded by potted plants that barely thrived in Louisiana's oppressive heat. Nothing hinted at the latent truths hiding in the shadows. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, resisting the urge to reach out. The time would come. Walking the cracked concrete paths littered with old soda cans, a buzz of memories flared the secrets we had shared, the brotherly bond that felt stronger than blood. He had talked about girls. I braved a kiss once because he dared me to. There had been laughter, so joyous it rang in my ears even now. Hell, every time I knocked on his door, I felt like I was peeping into an old, cherished tune that caught me off guard, every note carrying the sweetness of years gone by. The door creaked open, and Sam filled the doorway, the gray light of the hallway catching in his messy curls. "Hey, stranger," he grinned, though the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're early. Did you have a good trip?" "Yeah, you could say that," I replied, stepping into the disorganized living room that looked like a tornado of life had swept through clothes, piled haphazardly on one corner of the couch. Remnants of takeout scattered across the table. "Thought we could hang out. I might need your expertise on something." He raised an eyebrow, curious. "Philosophical dilemmas or affairs of the heart?" "Something like that," I said, watching as he moved away from the door, gesturing for me to join him. The moment should have felt like any other, but the uneasiness knotted tightly in my chest. He flopped down on the couch, running a hand through his hair, eyes fixed on me, earnest like a young boy awaiting his turn to spin a profound yarn around the campfire. "Rough week?" he asked, and there was a hint of concern woven into the softness of his voice. "More complicated than that," I started, hesitating as I surveyed the space between us, two brothers who had built invisible walls, two souls packed with unspoken words, Mom told me some things. I figured, he said, like he had been waiting for my arrival. Are you okay? I frowned, trying to maintain the mask I'd worn for so long, the mask that insisted I had it all figured out. Depends on your definition of okay, I replied slowly, licking my dry lips. What if what I thought or what she thought wasn't true? Sam leaned back, eyes narrowing in thought. You've lost me. What are you getting at? Then, like an avalanche, the full weight of my discovery attacked the surface. What if I told you that I found out our dad isn't actually my dad? That he's your dad, but I'm not your brother? The silence shattered like glass, and I watched as he processed my words, his mouth parting slightly, a deep furrow creasing his brow. The familiar room around us transformed, heavy and thick with remnants of conversations never had, truths undisclosed. Wait, what? Sam's tone sharpened, griping the coffee table as if it were his tether. Where did you hear that, Mom? She said something in passing, I stumbled, desperate to give context to the chaos now looming in the air. She didn't explain, but she would say something like that. He grunted, running his hands down his face. Mom has a way of dancing around truths. Why didn't you ever mention it? He sat up suddenly, eyes blazing with a mix of disbelief and hurt. Because it's one mess I didn't want to dive into. You're my brother, none of that matters to me. What began as an innocent afternoon spiraled into a storm of frustrated recollection. Conversations clashed, snippets of hurt and uncertainty colliding like thunder, turning us into shivering children again, playing house in a reality that no longer felt welcoming. I felt like a traitor, holding our history as if it were a time bomb. But between the sparks igniting between us lingered a deep undercurrent of something more profound. Whether we faced it or buried it, that night beckoned a reckoning neither of us were prepared for, and the clock ticked louder with each cycle. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, I breathed, feeling the heaviness of secrets bubble at my throat. But here we are, Sam. It's a mess, and now I don't know who I am. You are my brother. That's what matters, he said, voice low yet unyielding as if he were drawing a line in the sand. That resolute weight in his chest pulled closer to me, a promise tethered to uncertainty, even as the surrounding words swirled like leaves in a tempest. But questions loomed like storm clouds, and as we sat there, eyes locked, the shuttered windows of our lives creaked open, letting in a frigid breeze. There was more beneath the surface, a decision awaiting us, a past that could no longer be ignored. Our laughter echoed in the distance, fragile and creaking like a ship on unfathomable tides, teetering at the edge between what we held dear and the storm brewing ahead. The silence hung heavily between us, dragging at the edges of my resolve. I had always viewed Sam as my benchmark, an unwavering flag on a stormy sea, but this new revelation cracked that foundation wide open. Instead of comforting silence, there was an unyielding tension pulsating through the air like an electric storm on the horizon. I watched as Sam ran his fingers through his hair again, a familiar gesture that used to signal relief or clarity before our world crumbled into confusion. Look, he began, his voice steadying, but laced with resonance I couldn't quite decipher. This doesn't change how I feel about you. I mean, shit. We've been through life together, school, birthdays, breakups, everything. He paused, punctuating the word everything with a severity that dug deep into my skin. Sure, that's true, I replied, uncertain how to articulate my feelings without unraveling further. But I need to know what you think. Do you have any idea what our mom's been hiding? Why now? The question slipped out, shocking me with its own weight. I felt a shift in the room like the moment before a storm breaks, filled with suspense and apprehension. But from that storm came the raw potential for growth. He tilted his head back, studying the ceiling as if it possessed answers, like he could decode the twists of our lives from the faded plaster above us. Honestly, I've spent the last few years trying to make sense of what's between us, between her and whatever was left after Dad died. Maybe she miscalculated, or maybe she thought revealing the truth would shake our foundation enough to unravel everything. Do you remember those family dinners? I interjected, quickly clinging to a safety net of memories. The ones where Dad would tell those ridiculous stories, the spaghetti incident. I forced a chuckle, grasping at any semblance of normalcy, but Sam didn't join in. Sam, those moments were real to me. I know they were, but that's the point. His tone rose like a wave crashing against itself. I think Mom never wanted us to confront the truth head-on. We were a story she controlled, and maybe blind spots keep family intact. His voice cracked under the weight of those words, and a gust of frustration threatened to pierce through me. I thought of the metaphorical glass box Wed lived in, and just like that, I understood we were scanning the edges of clarity, while intentionally choosing to omit pieces of the bigger picture that loomed dangerously close with sharp edges. But that's not the way you mend a family, is it? I challenged, heat building in my chest. Someone needs to face it, Sam. That's how any relationship survives honesty. The truth seemed more persistent than the air pressuring our souls, hanging stubbornly in the air like stale coffee. Right. So, what do we do then? He asked, shifting his stance, eyes narrowing with contemplative intensity. Are we going to push our mother to spill it all? End up pulling at frayed threads that might undo whatever foundation we have left? I couldn't ignore the dread threading through his words. Unraveling always led to chaos, and beneath this uncertainty lay a festering history of our mother's expectations and secrets, ones constructed meticulously around our childhood to create a fairy tale existence. I just want to understand, I replied quietly. Those 3 words nestled close to my heart like a balloon floating upward, yearning to be released. Who am I, really? Who are we? He echoed, eyes searching mine, attempts at finding some common thread we could wrap ourselves back in to gain clarity. In that moment of stillness, the cogs of realization ground against each other. We weren't just discussing our origin, this was a deeper current, a deliberation of identity, one that tugged at our very core, which felt threatened by a disordered truth lurking on the periphery. Let's go find your mother, I proposed, and I barely recognized my own voice kneading through the budding resolve. We should confront her together. Sam's expression morphed into a conflicted mask of reckoning and hesitance. You think she's actually going to share everything? You think she'll tell us what she's kept buried for years? Maybe she's right to keep it hidden, to protect us. What's she protecting us from? I shot back, my heart racing. An existence built on lies. That's not authenticity. We need the painting and the backstory, that's all we've ever wanted. If we don't, we're just existing, Sam. I don't want to hide anymore. He offered a begrudging nod, yet the reluctance carved deep lines across his brow. We settled into an uncertain silence again before Sam glanced at me, determination wrestling with trepidation shining in his eyes. Okay, but if this goes south, I can't just lose you in this chaos. The raw truth hung between us like a steel cable, taut and crackling. I promise you, you won't lose me, I assured him, though I wasn't sure I believed my own words. Maybe that was the point we needed to confront that fear first. Our mother's place hovered close, standing amidst the disarray of blooming weeds and cracked sidewalks. It seemed both diminished and magnified under the weight of expectation. The paint chipped away in muted shades of pastel, a reminder of the splendor that had once been a source of pride. There was something intimate about it, a cradle that had once felt like home. As I approached the front step, a cascade of memories poured into my mind. Laughter, warm meals, the scratchy fabric of old blankets shared on cold nights. Yet the nostalgia turned sour as I knocked solidly on the door, the sound reverberating through the still air like a thunderclap. Just a moment, called our mother's familiar, sing-song voice, the kind that would feel comforting under different circumstances. But just as I tightened my grip at the doorframe, a vision teased the back of my mind, a recollection of our chaotic childhood. And within that chaos lay complication and secrets that could no longer stay buried. The door swung open, and she stood framed in the entrance dressed in a faded floral dress with her hair pulled messily into a bun. She blinked, momentarily taken aback, as if we were intruders in a sanctuary she had built since we left home. "Oh, you're both here." I wasn't expecting her words trembled softly, revealing a soft underbelly of uncertainty. "Mom, can we come in?" I surprised even myself with the firmness behind my request. My heart hammered in my chest as I processed what was about to unravel. "Of course, come in," she replied, stepping aside, her unexpected grace juxtaposed against the tension clinging to the room. She shifted, subtly guiding us toward the living area, where a pot of something aromatic simmered away, faintly masking the unsettled energy radiating off all three of us. We settled awkwardly into the small space. Frames lining the walls displayed moments frozen in time's smiling faces. School photos, every photograph held stories that now felt like hollow whispers. Artifacts of a history obscured, pressed side by side waiting to be opened. "Is everything all right? You both seem serious." She perched cautiously on the edge of the armchair opposite us, and beneath her reassurance, I noticed the slivers of agitation shimmering in her gaze. This was the moment we had stepped into the tempest together, and a pulsing tension vibrated through the air between us. "Mom," I began, summoning the courage I felt woven too tightly into the strands of my being, "we need to talk about us." Sam shifted in his chair beside me, an anchor against the stronger waves rising beneath our skin. "You said some things the other night that have been weighing us down, things about who we are." Her countenance shifted, softness replacing certainty, her confusion palpable. "Are you both okay? Did something happen?" "It's not about that," Sam interjected, boldly stepping in, grounding us both. "It is about what you didn't tell us, the truth." The air stilled, but with it came the undercurrent of all those words unsaid, the ghosts that had haunted us for too long. Our mother stiffened, taken aback. "But I thought we had moved past this. I thought you were content." "What do we have to be content about?" I pressed back, anger buoying my voice. "You've hidden the fundamental truth from us for years. We want to understand why." Her eyes glistened with the weight of technicolor memories shifting uncomfortably beneath the surface. The silence expanded, enveloping us like a shroud of fog. She hesitated, energy pulsing between us, before finally lowering her gaze, as if accepting the tides around her could no longer be ignored. "I did it to protect you both," she said, her voice quivering within the fragile silence. "But I see now that it's a broken protection. Broken." The word hung heavy through the stillness. I felt it leap through the interstice of the past, smashing against the fragile present. An unexpected storm brewed, churning and relentless. "Tell us everything," I murmured, heart thrumming wildly in my chest. As she opened her lips to share, that word hung there, tethered like a boat sent adrift beneath an unforgiving sky. I felt the swell of our past collide against the uncharted potential of our future, a realm of radical uncertainty that could either steal away the whispered memories we cherished or unravel them into something raw and beautiful. The raw dusk light slipped into the room, framing her features with a halo of uncertainty. "You both deserve to know the truth," she conceded, "but I must warn you, it won't be an easy conversation." As she began to draw the veil from our past, I took Sam's hand, squeezing tightly, as if we could anchor one another through the storm, whatever revelation came to pass. What would follow could unravel or reshape us, but I clung to hope. We would embrace truth, and within that embrace lay an opportunity to confront those who had shaped us, and through that confrontation we might find a way forward together. Clara's breath hitched as she collected herself, a fragile smile of resolve breaking through the trembling facade. "It is time, then," she finally said, her voice softer now, woven with threads of fear and uncertainty. "You both deserve to know the truth about your father, our family, everything." We settled in comfortably, but the hesitation in her eyes eclipsed any warmth the room might have had moments ago. The aroma of dinner still hung in the air, but it felt distant, muffled by the gravity of the moment, as if we were on the brink of a different kind of dish, one that could either nourish or suffocate. "Your father didn't just disappear," she began slowly, the words like stones dropped one at a time into a deep well. "He was never just one man to me. He was called Marcus, but his name is the core of it." She paused, searching our faces for something understanding, perhaps, or reassurance that we were ready to hear more. He was part of my world before any of you. The air shifted around us, the branches of our family tree creaking and bending. I exchanged a glance with Sam, whose eyes widened with confusion and empathy. "What do you mean, you loved him?" I asked, resentment and longing piled into every syllable. She lowered her gaze, the lines of pain etched deeply across her face. In a way, yes. But it was also filled with the weight of expectation and obligation. Your father was my first love, and I was young, foolish as we all are. We had this beautiful, reckless romance. Things were perfect until they were not. Until what? Sam implored, urgency rising in his voice, until he left. It was in the aftermath of a tragedy, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I was pregnant with Ethan when we had our last devastating fight. He wanted to move away to leave the past behind, and I had to choose between him and my family. Well, your family. It was a choice he didn't take gracefully, and suddenly I was thrust into a reality I never envisioned. So you kept it from us. Anger flared in my chest, hot and sudden. You turned Ethan into the father figure. All this time, we were pretending a lie existed. Why didn't you just tell us? Her eyes flashed with a mixture of regret and defiance. Because I was terrified of how you would be affected. I thought I was protecting you too. I thought you'd have a better life if you didn't have to stumble around shadows. It was a vision of childhood, the golden memories splintering, and I could feel the ache of betrayal mingling with confusion coursing through my veins. But how could keeping us in the dark ever protect us? The sadness bubbling in my voice surprised me, a bitter blend of love and hurt. Because, she said with sudden fervor, I feared you'd see only fragments of love being lost. I thought creating our own story would give you a beautiful life, a life where your beginnings didn't haunt you. I shook my head, disappointment crashing like surf against a fragile shore. So you created a deception instead. Listen, Clara continued, her voice steady now. Leaving Marcus shattered me. I raised you two to believe in the family unit I thought we could become, something that could flourish without him. But it was never perfect, just a veneer over the truth. I thought if I could just keep it hidden, you'd never have to face what I faced, but we're facing it now. Sam interjected, holding my gaze with unwavering passion. And we deserve to face it together, don't we? The silence cracked like an egg, and I felt exposed, heart laid bare beneath the weight of revelations. My memories warped, reshaping before my eyes as jealousy and compassion turned into a delicate dance filled with hope. "I'm so proud of who you've become," Clara murmured. A flicker of hope kindled in her voice. "Perhaps I shielded you from what I feared the most, the damage hidden, and how I felt helpless to fix it. Both of you have grown, molded into something extraordinary. You deserve to be whole." Within that room, under the weight of our past, I felt a dawning realization budding in the quiet blooms of loss. Perhaps we could confront this together. For once, I sought understanding over resentment, clarity over chaos. What if finding Marcus meant rewriting ourselves into a family without secrets? I proposed, allowing my thoughts to spill into the warm air, together with the weight of vulnerability. What if we could seek the truth rather than shy away? It's a lot to digest. But I know I wouldn't have survived without Sam, without the bond we have. What if we transformed our stories, learned what we could from discovering the past? Can we fold his pieces into ours? Clara's lips thinned into a line of contemplation, and I could see the wheels of her mind churning, probing into the microscopic fibers of her earthy narrative. Finding Marcus might not lead to what you expect. What if he's moved on? The memories could be painful. This might disrupt everything. I hesitated, wanting to reach out but uncertain how to bridge that chasm between mother and children. Sam's fingers curled around mine, steady and warm. Nothing is perfect, but what matters is how we respond, how we face what's ahead. We've been muddling through our lives as if the ghosts want catch up to us. What if confronting him doesn't spell our doom, but rather the opposite? Slowly, Clara seemed to draw strength from our words, reluctant but willing to march back through her shadows. "I'll help you search for him," she promised, her voice now resolute. It was a leap of faith, a commitment that sent echoes of hope rippling through our secluded corners. "Thank you," I whispered, gauging her sincerity. Days bled into weeks as we buried ourselves in a thrum of excitement, bound by our newfound purpose. We sifted through dusty phone directories, piecing together breadcrumbs of Marcos history that lay scattered amid memory lanes. Each document a weight we would shoulder together. And then, the day came when we piled into Clara's aging minivan and began our journey to a town I had never known, along roads intertwined with a past now refracted into the light. I remember feeling a restless energy humming through my bones, a unity developing quietly between us. Little did I know, the echoes of our journey would bring upon us a hurricane of emotions. When we finally arrived, Clara's pulse quickened visibly, her fingers gripping the steering wheel as if it were a lifeline. The town seemed unfamiliar but comforting, an ethereal echo of the stories Shed recounted so many times. "Here we go," she sighed, taking a shaky breath. All around us, homes rose up like shattered dreams from the earth, some worn but dignified while others crumbled under the weight of years. It felt strangely familiar, like coming home to a place you had never known, the landscape steeped in the mythology of a life half remembered. We found Marcos' address hidden on a slip of paper, scrawled hastily in the back of her notebook. As we pulled up outside the simple, single-story house, adorned with wildflowers overgrown from lack of care, the moment settled like the stillness before a storm. "I think we should knock," Sam said, voice as steady as ever, but I could sense the tremor beneath his resolve, reflected in my own heart thrumming like a cornered animal. Together, I reaffirmed, squeezing his hand tightly. Clara stepped forward, driven by whatever life force propelled her forward, and rapped on the door. Each echo seemed to drum against my eardrums, sending reverberations of anxiety cascading over us. Then, the door creaked open, and time seemed to freeze. Standing before us was a man marked by rust-colored lines painted across his weathered skin, a face that held the imprint of experience but juxtaposed with an unmistakable apprehension. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice deep yet wary. Marcos, Clara's whisper danced through the heavy air, ripe with unresolved threads. The recognition sparked, shifting the atmosphere between us. Clara, his features flickered with surprise, unraveling into something vulnerable. The weight of recognition pulsed in the air, years upon years of choices filtered into a single word. "Yes, it's me," she breathed, her voice trembling reverently, and in that moment I realized how young she had always been, how terrified. Our gazes traversed the man who once was the architect of our existence, and with every hesitation, the enormity of the moment began uncoiling before us. Sam and I stepped closer, sharing that bond that had become a silent anchor in turbulent seas. "Who are?" he began, his eyes flitting toward us, but Clara stepped forward, allowing the words to tumble from her lips. "We are your children, Ethan and Sam." If time could stop as well as stretch, that moment felt exquisitely suspended, yet unbearably raw. We were marionettes pulling against the strings of fate, grappling with the possibility of forging new ties and rebuilding a sense of family amidst uncertainty. His breath hitched as he scanned our faces, disbelief washing over him, but the weighted silence persisted. I never knew you left," Clara stepped in, a tone of strength slowly tempering her vulnerability. "You chose to distance yourself from us, but now we need to understand why. What drove you away?" Marcos flinched, darkness catching at the edges of his gaze. "It's complicated," he muttered, trying to retreat behind a veil of reasoning, but the depth of our questions propelled us forward. "Complicated doesn't fully encompass what we feel, what we've lived through," I interjected, desperation dripping off my tongue, fueled by an urgency I couldn't extinguish. "Whatever burden drove you into silence doesn't need to echo in fear. Open the door. We want to know you." He seemed to reconsider, wrestling with the discomfort playing on his features. "This is just a reunion, it's a reckoning." "Then let it be that," Sam urged softly, stepping beside me in unison, already gathered to embrace whatever truths awaited us. "We owe it to ourselves to be whole." Marcos' resolve weakened against the flow of our hope. "I can't change the past," he said, eyes now glistening with unshed tears. But I can help us weave it back together. In that moment, amidst the cacophony of uncharted choices, realization thundered through us. Whatever the outcome, we were venturing toward the unknown as a family, just reclaiming our truths. Clara stepped forward, hesitant yet unwavering, a tender force in the room. We weren't perfect either, she admitted, voice trembling, but letting those shadows linger doesn't make us whole. We need to share our hearts, together. I would rather risk all than flee from what could ignite the wildest flames of understanding, I murmured, words flowing into the atmosphere, electricity sparking between us, parents and children, reclaiming lost memories now charged with promise. As we converged in his doorway, two brothers standing side by side, and a mother reuniting with her past, vulnerability laced with anticipation filled the air, translucent and brave. We knew stepping across this threshold meant venturing into intersections of love and heartache, but peering into the unknown held its own array of challenges. We stepped further into his world, merging fragments anew, as memories folded into tighter knots, exploring what transfixed us, a tapestry woven in love's raw honesty, a family beating untamed yet twisting into an even more beautiful form. As the door closed with a click behind us, I could feel threads uncoiling, and I understood the past didn't vanish, but rather offered jumping-off points for new beginnings. Beyond that doorway lay both danger and promise, a landscape of cracked beauty we could reshape together. Onward, we plowed, hazarding into the unknown, transformed in our vulnerability, a family forged now like steel in the fabric of time, an intricate mosaic of forgiveness, connection, and the willingness to uncover the veils wrapping our love. With every beat of understanding, we wove ourselves anew, shaping a future that would stretch across any barrier we could fathom, united against the tides that sought to pull us apart. And through that truth-telling path were replies to every question we'd harbored, laying down the threads of both warmth and solace we would seek. Together, we sought the wild potential awaiting us beyond the variables of our origins, ready at last to breathe life into a new chapter, one written not in shadows but bathed in light.